So this video is for the daily temperature test. So we got like daily temperatures. And for the daily temperature test, what do we need to do? We need to first ask for num days. So we have a couple of variables. We have num days, which is the number of days that they are going to be entering in. This is for a single month, so the maximum number on num days should be 31. And then we have an array called dates. What else do we have? And then we have okay, well I guess we could stop right there. And so you can see in part 2 that the dates array should be made of num day number of elements. So if they entered in 30 for num days, then when you create the dates array, you're going to create that array with 30 elements in it, or num day elements in it. Okay, so then we're going to, what part 3 is use a for loop to fill the array with integers from 1 to num days. Okay, so then next thing we would do is have a for loop that fills dates with I, right? So date sub I is equal to I. And of course you're going to run this for loop num days number of times, right? So then so the first iteration date sub 0 is going to be equal to 0. Ooh, I'm sorry. I plus 1, right? So the first iteration date sub 0 is going to equal to 1. Then the next iteration date sub 1 is going to equal to 2, and so on. So you're filling up the dates array with the number of days from 1 up to num days, right? Because you're saying here in the for loop I is less than num days as it iterates. Okay, and then what do we got? Okay, and then part 4 is create an array called dailyTemps. So I'm going to say dtemps. And then dtemps should also dtemps is holding the temperatures for each of the days in dates. So dtemps should be num days like large as well, right? So it should have num day number of elements also. And we're going to use a second for loop to randomly fill it with daily temperatures between -100 and +100. So here's we're going to have the same type of for loop as we have up here, where it's I is less than num days. And then it's easy to use math.random to get random numbers from 0 to 100. Yeah, we know how to do that. You just do math.random and then you multiply it by I think 101 is what you want to do, then turn it into an int, right? So if you do like math.random and then you multiply that by 101 and then we turn that into an int, that should do it for us, because then it would go from 0 to 100.99999, and then intifying it, or turning it in from a float to an int, would truncate the decimal place, turning it to 0 to 100. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now the trick is, how do you get negative numbers, right? Well, for this you would need to use an if statement. So it'd be like if some random number from 1 to 2, right, is equal to 2. That's going to happen half of the time. Then you make this expression positive, right? And then you do else. You'll make that expression be negative, right? So so then this algorithm, what it's going to do is going to generate random numbers from -100 to +100. It's going to go do this half of the time, and it's going to do this the other half of the time. Okay, and then what? Let's see, I think that's about it. Okay, and then we create an array called forecast. And forecast is also going to be num days large, and it's going to be filled with string elements. That's going to say hot, moderate, cold, or freezing. And then in a for loop we want to fill the forecast with strings. Okay, so then here we have another for loop, and in this for loop we are going to iterate for num day number of times, and we're going to be testing. The if is going to be testing the temperatures, and the temperatures are right here in dtemps, right? So we're going to say dtemps sub I is greater than or equal to 80, then forecast sub I is going to be equal to hot. And then we would follow the rules that are listed in the test, where it's else if temps is is greater than or equal to 50 and temps is less than 80, then we'll say moderate, and then same thing for 32 to 50, and then same thing to less than 32. And then the last thing is that we need to print everything out in columns, and the way that you print things out in columns is you're going to print out x1, and then you'll add a /t, right? Well, and then we're going to add the second thing that you want to print out plus a /t, and so on. And so the /t, if you remember from the problem set, makes it so that each column is, I believe, 5 spaces wide, and it will put this variable value to the rightmost spot of this 5-space column that is created by the tab. And so for some of these values, I think you might need 2 tabs because they're like getting bigger than the tab is. But that's pretty much it. That's how you like print it out in columns. And yeah, that's dailyTemp.